Hello and welcome to Lunch and Learn. I'm Vince Marino, your host, and I got a special guest and good friend of mine, Brian Strait with Check-All Valve. Brian, how you doing?
Good, Vince. How are you? Good to see you again.
Fantastic. Brian and I go a ways back, but I never got to ask you to give me a detailed example of what exactly Check-All Valve offers. All too often, I think of a valve as something that just has a handle and you just turn it on and turn it off, and that's a valve. It's just like a ball valve. But you guys are way beyond a ball or a gate valve or something. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about Check-All Valve and
That's correct. Yeah, we
start with,
manufacture spring-loaded poppet-style check valves. So as you referenced, the ball valve with the handle, it's pretty common as well as a valve that you might find outside your home that you open up to pour water out through a hose or what have you. Our valves are different. Our valves operate by having the media open the valve with compressing a spring, and then allows the valve to shut when the media stops flowing. So you don't have to manually operate the valve.
awesome. So tell me a little bit about your company. While you do that, I'm actually going to pop up some video here. Um,
Sure.
I was looking at this earlier. You've been around since 1958,
That's
internationally
correct.
recognized. Tell us
That's
a little
correct.
bit.
We've been around since 1958, manufacturing again spring-loaded poppet-style check valves, all manufactured in West Des Moines, Iowa. And that is all we do. We concentrate on that, and we pride ourselves on putting out a quality product to do that.
Yeah, it looks like what I'm looking at here is a fella doing some CAD design. So do you, I'll pause that for a second. Do you actually design a valve to spec?
We do. We design all of our valves in-house. We design them to standard connections. We can also design custom connections to a customer's specific needs, which is, again, one thing we do all the time. So we can also, like I said, we provide standard connections and custom connections to make sure that the valve works for the customer.
Do you have an example there that you can just hold up and show me the of a valve?
Yeah, we do have samples that we use to sell the product, market the product. Salesmen come out and here's one of the examples. This is a bush, or what we call our bushing valve, which is a standard pipe bushing. As you can see, it's got the internal threads, the external threads. You'd normally see this type of bushing in any piping system. What we do is we put a check mechanism, as you can see with the cutaway there. We put a check mechanism inside that bushing so it can allow media to go one way and not the other, which is very important to prevent pumps from spinning backwards or water hammer destroying equipment or things like that. It's very important to have that happen. So you can take a standard bushing out of the system, put this in the system right where it was at before, and now you have a check valve without having to cut away or reconfigure things. Just a real inexpensive, efficient way to install a check valve.
Yeah, so if you could tell me an example where you personally walked into a factory or a company that had a problem with their existing valves, and you presented an option that basically saved the day or resolved their issue.
I went into a facility that had an autoclave that sterilized equipment that they needed to have sterile, obviously. They were using a swing check valve, which is a valve that has a flapper that just opens and closes to cut off the flow or prevent the flow from going backwards. The dilemma that they were facing is that when they would turn the autoclave off, it introduced steam into the autoclave. When they turned it off, the steam condensated and it created a vacuum. To open that door, you have to relieve that vacuum. Otherwise, you can't get the door open. This valve would open up and flutter. It'd flutter like this. And over time, it would wear itself out. And that valve, although performs a fine function out in the industry, that particular function it really isn't meant to do. So they were having valves wear out 3 to 4 months, and they'd have to go replace new valves, bring their maintenance people out, and the valves were very inexpensive, but they had to replace them quite often. And then you'd have a system down. So what we did is we looked at their flows and pressures needed, what they could live with for pressure losses and things as such, done the calculations, then put a valve together with a spring in it so that when that valve opened up, it opened up smoothly, opened up fully, allowed that media to come through, and then closed nice and smoothly. And then it lasted for a very, very long time, many, many years rather than just months.
So something that was being replaced every 2, 3 months, you were able to extend the life of repair up to 5 years, which is an amazing return on your investment.
Yes,
You reduce downtime and maintenance costs in one whack.
correct.
I have to go back to the video one more time, Brian. Just
Sure.
indulge me because I'm looking at this fella right here, and that looks like some high-tech equipment for designing your valves.
That is a computer numeric controlled or CNC lathe. So
Yeah.
basically, they program it in a computer, set the geometries and things as such to go in and manufacture the valves that you see there. Those are cut out of bar stock. So you put the program in, the tooling cuts it up, and it brings out a valve that we can put together with a check mechanism in it.
You know,
Here's some
here's
examples here
yeah,
of
this
several of our styles.
these are all your products right here that I'm looking at. So that's a good point for me to just kind of stop and ask you, where do you ship these to? Who wants them? Do they all strictly North America? Do you Canada? I mean, where do these valves go?
We ship our valves all over the world. We have a network of independent sales agencies and distributors that market our product throughout North America, China, Korea, Australia, Europe, Middle East, virtually South America, virtually anywhere in the world.
That's amazing. Right out of Des Moines, Iowa.
Correct.
Hmm. Well, tell me a little bit more. How do people order your valves, and what's the method they call?
They can certainly call us. We have live people here, 515-224-2301. You get an auto attendant that directly asks you if you want to speak to sales or an operator. You push a button and you get a live person right away. We've always wanted to make sure that you get live people that you're talking to so we can get your information to you as quick as you can, because the customer's time is important to them. They can also email us at sales@checkall.com. We do have a website, and I'd like to share that with you here, that you can actually order online. And if you see here, you can request a quote or you can place an order, and you can select place an order. It'll go to a screen that shows you where to fill out your information so we know who you are and where to ship your product to. And then we'll save that information. So the next time you come in, you just punch in your customer number, auto populates it, and it makes it much easier to order than it already is.
Interesting. You know, a minute ago, you were just showing that a picture. I'm going to show it to you. This flange connection here. Do you see that one?
Correct.
Maybe you can tell me a little bit more about that. That's sort of an unusual looking. To me, that doesn't look like a valve. So how does that work exactly?
As you can see here on the cut sheet, the left, there's an image of the check valve. It's got a cutaway area so you can see how the poppet works or the check mechanism. But
Right.
it looks almost like a flying saucer, if you will. But what it does to the right, on the right picture, is sandwiches in between ANSI class flanges, which are standard connections in a piping system. Again, you have these flanges, so you don't have long rows of pipe that you have to kind of replace. You'll put these connections in different spots so you can, if you need to replace pipe, you don't replace as long a section. What we do is we put a valve together that it can sandwich in between that, so then it fits nicely in there. You don't have to reconfigure the system. You can just open up the flange, put our check valve in there, and now you got a check valve that's working in a very cost-effective installation manner.
Awesome. You know, again, not to beat up on the video here, but when I was going through this earlier, I noticed this is some really great looking CFD, computational fluid dynamic software to help demonstrate your valve in action. That actually brings me to a couple of questions. One of them is, what's the diameter max that you can do with these valves? I mean, I'm thinking that little flying saucer one was this big around, but how big can you make these valves?
We go anywhere from 1/8 NPT to 20-inch flange connections, like that flying saucer valve.
Yeah, I gotcha. And so one of the other things I noticed was that after production, it looks like you guys do some rigorous testing of these valves too after they're complete. And if it's going to come up here in a second, um, this, by the way, video is just fantastic. Look at that. So on the left here, I'm going to stop it.
On the
He's
left here, that's where we're putting a flag tag on the valve. As you might imagine, when you sandwich that in between the ANSI class flanges, it's kind of hard to see that it's a check valve in there. It might look like an orifice plate or some sort of other device. So that's putting a flag tag on there. Not every valve gets that, but when a customer wants one, we'll weld the flag tag to it so it sits outside the flanges, outside any insulation that's on the system, and it indicates that there's a valve in there and what the flow orientation is. It also gives what we'll call our VIN number, which is valve identification number, as well as full part number and full traceability of the valve materials. On the right, you can see that there's a seat leak tester, and we perform seat leak tests, as you can see, to MSS P61 and API 598 on every valve that leaves our facility.
Wow. It really seems like you guys really do care about the quality. And I think that comes through if you've been around since 1958. This is interesting here. That's actually kind of this represents a pipe, I would imagine, and the valve behaving under pressure of fluids.
Correct. We have that clear glass so we can see the pipe, the valve functioning, and that is our in our laboratory. We have an in-house laboratory with a flow stand that we can do measurements to determine how much pressure loss through the valve is, how much flow is coming through the valve, and then we can utilize that information to qualify that the CFD information is also accurate in stating what it states. So all the information in our catalog or on our website that determines what the flow characteristics of the valve are and things as such as accurate as possible.
You know, so we've covered how to order, your service area, the quality associated with your valves. I mean, it obviously a lot of care goes into the production and testing of these valves. So how to order and where they are and so forth. And also an example of where you yourself went into a factory, in this case, the autoclave, and helped solve problems. So I think we've covered everything, but it's been quite interesting. And I think I learned a whole lot more than I knew before about check-all valve. I can't thank you enough for hopping on the recording here and sharing a little bit about it. Is there anything else you want to add?
Just that we do pride ourselves in putting out a quality product. We have less than 0.5% return rate, and our on-time delivery is 99.9%. So we want to make sure that the customer gets a quality product on time so they are not down and can operate and continue to operate. Nobody likes to think about a check valve, and nobody really does, as you mentioned earlier in the episode here, that just don't think about it until they don't work. Then they need one, and that's where we come in, and we want to make sure they get them good quality and right now.
So what's the timeline? Like, say I'm down at oil and gas in Texas and I need a check-all valve.
We typically can assemble a valve to the application, get the information, put the right spring in there, which springs anywhere are set anywhere from 1/8 PSI up to about 75 PSI and virtually anywhere in between. And then we put a product together, send it down there normally within a week or less.
Amazing. Well, it's been a real treasure getting to chance to sit down and talk to you a little bit. It's been pretty busy, and I'm glad we finally got a chance to hear a little bit more about check-all valves. I can't thank you enough, Brian. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Vince, and it's always good to talk to you.
Take care. Folks, if you are interested, check out Brian at Check-all Valve. He gave you all the numbers. We'll have all the details in the body of the YouTube video. And all you have to do is just reach out. Again, thank you for joining me on Lunch and Learn with Vince.